Welcome in another edition of the Dirt Racing Podcast. Let's get started.
Welcome into another edition of the Dirt Racing Podcast. Coming up in a couple minutes, Tyler McKim from Beer Hill Gang will be on to recap your PA Speed Week. But first of all, I put on our Twitter page a potential list at Burlington for the 305 class. So if you want to see that list, go to our Twitter page. And like I mentioned last week on the Ultimate Challenge, that will now be Sunday night, August 9th. Instead of being the Tuesday night show, the Front Row Challenge will still be on the 10th. So that's the upcoming news. In a little bit, we'll also have a preview to wrap up the show, the format and preview of the Corn Belt Nationals for USAC Sprint Cars. Welcome, Tyler McKim to the show from the Beer Hill Gang. How's it going, Tyler?
What's going on? Nice to be here.
You had a great week last week with PA Speed Week.
Sure did. Incredible crowds all week. Everybody, all the tracks definitely made their money this week, and it's a ton of fun.
And you got to see a certain somebody beat up on everybody.
Yeah, Kyle was probably the most popular guy in central Pennsylvania this week, and definitely ran really well. I think his worst finish was 6th all week.
And I know Dietrich was up in there a couple nights.
Yeah, Danny finished 2nd in points, and with a week that probably would have won any Pennsylvania Speed Week if Kyle wasn't there. He struggled towards the end of the week with a little bit of car problems, and which delayed his start to Ohio Speed Week, but overall pretty good week and a 2nd place finish for him.
And then, of course, you had the 69K ran up in there.
Of course, Lance had, I can't remember how many races. He probably only ran 4 or 5 races and still finished 8th in points, so you could tell that's how dominant he was in all the other races.
And then the other thing I saw on the internet, people complain about a couple tracks having 2 races.
That's always been kind of the PA Speed Week deal. I mean, it's just how it is. The promoter that promotes it, he has relationships with tracks, and he doesn't have relationships with some other tracks. And I mean, we've been running 2 races at the Grove for, it's probably been 15 years, so that's nothing new there. The only thing that's been different here in the last 5 to 8 years is Lincoln and Port both get 2 races now, which are, our marquee tracks. They run every Saturday night. They run 410s, so I don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of other people do, but I don't have a problem at all with it.
And then the big one was Hagerstown.
Yeah, Hagerstown had a really nice crowd. I don't think it touched Williams Grove's first Friday crowd, but very big crowd down in Hagerstown, of course, across the Pennsylvania border, which a bunch of people get hot over. But it's in 5 miles you're in Pennsylvania again. So it's really that Mason-Dixon line. People, at least locally, don't really distribute which is Pennsylvania and what's Maryland.
Yeah. But the first night at the Grove was probably the best race I've seen there forever.
Yeah, pretty good race. Lance got his 99th career win at Williams Grove, and the track was it was slow, which is usually really good for racing at Williams Grove. It gets really high speed and fast. You don't quite get the show that you get with a slower, slick track, but yeah, Lance held off Larson, who was hard charging. Of course, that was only Larson's, I think, 3rd ever start at Williams Grove, so to learn that quickly on such a tricky track like Williams Grove, it's the hardest track, dimensions-wise, to get a hold of as a new driver, especially.
And then I know the next night was Lincoln, and that was another barn burner. Lincoln
was probably the best race of all week. This is the first race at Lincoln on Saturday. At one point, I think with about 8 or 9 to go, you could throw all 4 cars under a blanket for the lead between Danny Larson, Deweese, and Freddie Raymer all up front with honestly, Larson, he looked a little lost. Danny kind of schooled him there on with a couple laps to go and took the lead and never really looked back. He was definitely the fastest car that night, and Larson just didn't really have anything for him.
And I know Sunday was the Sillers Grove.
Sunday, yeah, Sillings Grove was probably the best Sillings Grove race that people have seen in a very long time. A very slick track, and Rico led a little bit. Larson was passing a couple cars. Macri ran well. Macri finished fourth. But Danny was, again, on an absolute tear, and was definitely the fastest car on back-to-back nights at Lincoln and at Sillings Grove. Nobody had anything for him there at Sillings Grove.
And then was Monday night Port? I couldn't remember all.
Monday night was another Lincoln show.
Oh, yeah, that's...
Like Lincoln on Monday night. And honestly, I mean, it was a good race, but it was the first race where we really kind of slowed down, where we didn't have, like, incredible racing, but the racing was still really good. Rico ran up front and kind of ran away from the whole deal. He won by about 2 seconds over Reitzel. Reitzel finished second. This was the first night. We brought in some of the all-star guys. Aaron Reitzel showed up. Corey Eliason, Christopher Bell made his debut, and Bell finished third. But, yeah, Rico, Reitzel, Bell, top three, all outsiders, which I know ruffled a couple feathers, and the Larson 6th and 7th. And at this point, we had a real serious points battle between Larson and Danny, and Ryan Smith, who finished 5th at Lincoln, which was night 4, was still in the mix there in 3rd by this point in the speed week.
And then it was Grandview, if I remember right.
Yes, Grandview was Tuesday night, and this was, man, I just wish Christopher Bell started on the pole and got into a lap car on lap 5. Kyle Reinhardt spun, and Bell just clipped the right side of him and broke the rear suspension and had a flat tire, and he had to pull in for the night. But it would have been a lot of fun to watch Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson rip around Grandview in battle, because those two guys have won a lot of races at Grandview, even with limited starts. Just the past 5 speed week races have been won by Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson, and it would have been a lot of fun to watch them through. And Sammy Swindell finally pulls out and gets a really good showing, and finished 3rd that night.
Yeah, and then we went to Port the first time.
Yeah, Port on Wednesday night was a very good track. It was actually probably the first time this season that we had a top and a bottom. It's normally there, really the only line is the absolute wall, and then you throw some sliders, and that's how you pass. But this Wednesday night show, we had a lot of inside grooves. I know Lance and Reitzel both really late got the bottom to really work, and they were catching Macri, but Macri that was his fourth win in a row at Port Royal, and that hasn't happened in over 2 decades to win 4 in a row at Port Royal. So he was on an absolute tear at that point. Larson finished 4th that night. Finally he had struggled early, but passed some cars late, and Logan Wagner, who led early, broke a shock, which would have sucked. I'd like to see Macri and Wagner battle it out up front.
And then we went to Hagerstown.
Hagerstown, one of the biggest crowds that night. I still can't believe the crowd that night. It was absolutely ridiculous. But Larson on the pole is almost impossible to beat, and he was so fast that night. But there was a little glimpse of hope around. I think it was around 10 to go. Sammy was really reeling him in while in second, and I think a lot of people were really rooting for Sammy, trying to see the old guard and new guard battle it out on such a historic track like Grandview. Then we had a late caution, and Kyle kind of ran away, and Mark slid Sammy for second, so Mark ended up second that night. But overall, some pretty good racing for Hagerstown. Brand new surface out there.
And then Friday night, I know it was a late night at the Grove.
Very late night at the Grove. I sat up on Beer Hill all night with all the guys. We got rained on for about 25-30 minutes, and had another 40 minutes of track prep. And I think we got out of there probably around midnight with a 1-division show. But hats off to the Grove. The guys there at the track crew, they put together a really good service. Ended up being a really good race for the amount of rain, the amount of water that was on the track. Larson Larson getting by Lance there late. Sucks for Brett. Brett Marks was leading pretty early. I think he led about 20 laps, about 20 of the 30 laps. And remind you, this race is 15,000 win, the crown jewel of Pennsylvania Speedweek, Mitch Smith Memorial. And just jumped the cushion a couple times, and Larson kind of showed on the bottom, so Marks went down low, Larson went around him. They got together a little bit in 1 and 2, but I think that was just a racing deal. But and then Lance ended up getting by Marks there. I think on the last corner, got him for second. So, but Marks got a third place finish out of it. Danny ended up six that night, and at this point, after this night, Larson basically clinched up the Speedweek title that night.
And then Saturday went back to Port.
Last night, the Greg Hodneck Classic. I was there pretty early. I know they had all the other guys were there early. They had a 5K in the morning, and then they had a cornhole tournament. Then they had the auction to benefit the Greg Hodneck Foundation. So all around a pretty good show up there. I would suggest anybody in the area, if they can get up to the Greg Hodneck Classic last year, they do a lot of good stuff for Greg Hodneck Foundation. But Larson finally, in victory lane, after winning that race, he was talking about how much he loved that place, and you could see it, just him running the wall on the outside. But Brett Marks was super fast. Again, it kind of sucks. He had a bad beginning of the week, or else he'd probably ended up second or third in points. But I'm really strong end for Brett, and but Kyle again too strong. Macri's win streak ends at 4. He smashed the wall with about 2 to go and had to pull in, so he ended up 18th. But still pretty good. I think he was running top 5 at the time, but again, Larson just way too good.
And then I know I've read something today on Danny Dietrich. Next weekend has a bounty against him.
Yes, the Weichert Memorial next weekend at Port Royal. It's a 2-night show. It'll be 10,000 to win each show. They're the All-Star Circuit of Champions. I think Danny will be running the Weichert 29 scheme. So they have some locals up there that are putting a bounty on Danny for both nights. That if anybody can beat Danny in the Weichert car, because Danny ran really well last year. He won the Weichert Championship last year, which is a big bullhead trophy. Which anybody listening, they should definitely look that up and check it out. It's a giant bronze bull. That's a pretty cool little trophy that Danny won last year from winning the points for the 2 nights. But this will be the first year that it is All-Star sanctioned. So we're going to have Aaron Reitzel, we'll have Zeb Wise, Corey Eliason, Josh Bauman, maybe even Tony Stewart. Larson may be back for those shows, but it should be a fun show. I think we're at $1,027 for the bounty for Danny. I think anybody could still add on to that.
And then when's the first Outlaw show?
I do not think there are any Outlaw shows currently scheduled for the area. The Summer Nationals are supposed to be the weekend of the 24th, so it would be the 24th and 25th. But I think the Outlaws have already canceled that weekend with the COVID-19 going on, and I don't know if we have any other. I guess the National Open is still scheduled in September, and I guess Port Royal still has a scheduled race in the end of September, beginning of October. But I'm not 100% certain the Outlaws have any upcoming dates in the central Pennsylvania area, at least.
And I know the Tuscarora 50's got to be in there sometime.
Yes, Tuscarora 50 will be in September. Let me see if I can find the dates on that. But that's a fun week there at the Juniata County Fair going on. Ton of really good fair food. Opens off with the Labor Day Classic on Monday. And then it's going to be, the Tuscarora 50 will be 3 nights this year. It'll be September 10th, 11th, and 12th. All 3 of them will be All-Star sanctioned shows. And Thursday will be, I think, no support divisions. Friday we'll have super late models for 3,000 to win. And Saturday we'll have limited late models and is scheduled to pay 53,000 to win.
That's pretty good for that.
It's a very, very fun event. It's one of my favorite events of the year for the 53rd annual Tuscarora 50. Love getting up there. The fair just makes it like there's a giant county fair going on. Food is amazing. Crowd packed, and it should be a good race. I think we had 50 plus cars last last year for both shows for Friday and Saturday last year. So it's always ends up being a pretty good late model show on Friday. If you're a late model fan, they'll get some decent names. Rick Eckert will be there. Greg Satterley normally will always be there on the Friday show for super late models, and turns into a pretty good little event.
Yeah. And do you know if anybody is coming out this August for sure now?
Not 100% certain. Danny potentially could roam out. Maybe Buck Zierfoss and Brent Marks, but nobody confirmed that I know of yet. But I mean, it's subject to change. I mean, it's a pretty long ways out in terms of how everybody's been scheduling. It's been kind of scheduling on the fly for the races that they want to run. But everything could change. But if I'd make any guesses, Danny, Brett, Rock Zierfoss will make it out.
And maybe Malkery, because I know he ran the first night at Knoxville.
Yeah, I think he had plans to run the Nationals, but with that being canceled, I know they have outlaw shows on top of it. Don't know what his plans are. I know Pennsylvania is basically taking off. I think Lincoln is going to run a non-point show, and the Grove might also run a non-point show, but I know Port Royal is off. So, not 100% certain what guys will go out. They might still get some guys to go out, but if anybody's running points for Lincoln and Williams Grove, which Macri is not, but still, you never know.
Yeah. And can you tell about your TV sites?
Yeah, Barrel Gang TV. We broadcast every Tuesday at 7 Eastern on our Facebook page, Barrel Gang TV. You can follow us. And for Speed Week specifically, we did Victory Lane interviews every single night with the top 3. You can check those videos out. I did an interview, my first ever interview actually. I interviewed Kyle Larson and Williams Grove Victory Lane. So that's a pretty fun watch to see me struggle through some questions. But yeah, we check out Drop a Pink Tattoo Victory Lane interviews are on there. We post a bunch of different stuff going on, and then we have our shows on Tuesday at 7.
And then one more thing, have you seen Baps is making improvements?
Yes, I did see today they posted they're building some backstretch grandstands for the backstretch pit area, which is much needed because those backstretch guys, the only way they could go see the track was to walk all the way over to turn 1 and 2 to go up and see the track, unless they sit on their haulers. But I think they parked mainly, I guess, sprints there last time, and it's almost too far away from the track for anybody to stand on the hauler and see. But they're always doing improvements over there. Colton and Scott Gerbeck, the owner, always doing a lot of good stuff over there at Baps, and I think you'll see a lot more improvements over there, more so than just the backstretch.
Yeah. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. You can follow me on Twitter as @_Tyler_McKim, and check me out on Flow Racing. I just got a new job over there, but with the Speed Shift TV Flow Racing merger, moved on over there, so you can check me out on the Flow Racing broadcast from Port Royal.
Okay. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
Yep.
We'd like to thank Tyler once again for his contributions to the show. Now it's time to talk a little USAC racing, and the format for this weekend's Core Belt National starts tomorrow night at the Knoxville Raceway. And if you're used to watching on Flow, the only thing Flow's having is Saturday night's A-Main, but you can watch all the action on Dirt Vision both nights. This is how the format will work on this. It'll be Friday night. You gain points every time you're on the racetrack. For example, time trials, you get points, which would be split qualifying is if there's 32 or more cars. But points for it was 200 and down by 2. For the heat races, if there's 49 or more, there'll be 6 heat races with an invert of 6. If there's 4 heat races, the invert's still 6 with taking the top 4, 5 through 8 to the B, and 9 and 12 to the C, with 49 or more, which we're predicting. Top 3 to the A, 4 through 6 to the B, the rest to the C. Heat race points are 100 and drop down by 3. Then the C main would take 4 depending, or 6 if it's 49 or more, which would be 10 laps the distance. Then your B main would be top 4 if 49 or more, which we're predicting, would be 6 to transfer the A, 12 laps the distance. And then your A main will invert to top 8 with 25 laps the distance, points for 200, going down by 2. So the perfect score tomorrow night would be 500. Then Saturday night, this is the gets tricky part. You'll have time trials again. If there's 32 or more cars, will be split field. If there's 51 or more, 50 on down receives 2 points, where it's 100 points. Then we go to the qualifiers. And there'll be 3 qualifiers if it's 24 to 30 or 41 cars, invert 6. 42 or more, 4 qualifiers, inverting 6. For points, the winner gets 50, drop down by 3. Then they'll figure out the points from Friday and then early part of Saturday, and it will lock the top 18 directly to the A main, and in their B main, in the C. And if there's 55 or less or more, they're saying 60 cars or less, no D, but there is a D. 6 will transfer to the C. The C main would transfer 6 to the B and 6 to the feature. And some defending champions in the race that have won at Knoxville before. Going back to 2017, Justin Grant picked up the win. You also see Tyler Courtney, the 2018 winner, a strong runner. Also, defending champion Brady Bacon, that swept both nights last year, is going to be entered. Some top contenders that I see, Chase Stockton going to be in the field. Kevin Thomas Jr., Chris Windham, and more, including the People's Champion Dave Darwin. But it's also it's a points earning show up points for USAC, Power Eye, and the Iowa Sprint League. And then on the card for Friday night will be the regular 360 sprint car program. And then Saturday night, the regular 410s will be in action. So that's the Corn Belt. And that should wrap it up for this coming show. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. There's a couple chances to see us in person this coming up in a couple weeks. The first opportunity, Thursday, the 23rd in Pella. There'll be race nights uptown, and we'll be there with the booth set up, and there'll be race drivers. It'll start at 6 o'clock on the square in downtown Pella. Also, we're doing a tribute show you'll hear coming up July 25th, 2 p.m. But if you can planning on being at Knoxville that night, you can make it to the Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum. The show will be at 2 p.m.
Thanks for listening to another edition of the Racing Podcast.